Have you ever felt like your voice just disappeared? Like one day, you were trusted to make your own decisions, and the next, people started deciding everything for you? Not because you asked them to, not because you couldn't, but simply because you got older. I know that feeling, because it happened to me, and not from strangers, but from my own child, someone I raised, someone I protected, loved, and gave my life to. One day, he looked at me not as a capable adult, not as his mother, but as someone who could no longer be trusted with her own choices, and without asking, without even sitting down to talk, he made a decision that would change everything. A decision that left me shocked, heartbroken, and powerless. They placed me in a facility, just like that, no real conversation, no warning, no choice, as if my freedom no longer belonged to me. It didn't start that way. At first, it looked like love. He asked if I was okay, if I remembered my pills, if I was eating. I smiled, thinking it was care, but then, his words started to shift. From asterisk, how are you feeling? To asterisk, you shouldn't live alone anymore. From asterisk, did you sleep well? To asterisk, you're not safe on your own. And suddenly, the tone changed, and so did the power. What hurts most isn't the decision itself. It's how invisible I became. How easily my opinion was dismissed. How quickly my age was used against me. I didn't lose my memory. I didn't lose my mind. I lost something more subtle, more painful. I lost my right to be heard. Have you ever been there? Sitting in the same room, while people speak about your life as if you weren't even present, as if your feelings are optional. That's what emotional control looks like. And in many families, it wears the face of love. It's not always harsh. Sometimes it's wrapped in gentle words, good intentions, and quiet domination. We don't talk about this enough. The truth is, there are thousands of elderly parents being controlled by their adult children. And no, it's not always abuse. It's more complicated than that. It's when care becomes possession, when concern becomes silence, when love becomes a cage. And this silence, this slow, quiet erasing of a parent's autonomy, doesn't just happen overnight. It builds. It starts with one small decision made for you, and before you know it, your life no longer feels like your own. But what if I told you that you're not alone? That there are so many others out there, still sharp, still loving, still full of life, who've been made to feel like their time is over, like their voice doesn't count anymore. If any part of this sounds familiar, if you've ever been made to feel like a burden instead of a person, stay with me, because what you're about to hear might shake something loose inside you. It might remind you of who you really are. Now, I want to go even deeper into this. And if any part of what I've said has echoed something inside you, even just a little, I want you to know, this space was made for that. For the feelings we're told to keep quiet. For the stories that don't fit into polite conversations. For the truths that still need a voice. Maybe you've lived something similar. Maybe someone close to you has. Or maybe you've never spoken about it, not because it didn't matter, but because you didn't think anyone would understand. But here, your story matters, your voice matters, and your experience could be the very thing that helps someone else feel seen for the first time. So if this topic speaks to your heart, I'd love to hear what part of it touched you most. Leave a comment, even a sentence. That small action creates connection. It shows others they're not alone. And believe me, the impact of that is bigger than you might think. If you're still with me, if you've been feeling the weight of this conversation and want to be part of a space where these stories can continue, go ahead and like this video. It's a simple click, but it tells the platform that this is a conversation worth having, that it matters. And if you'd like to walk this journey a little further with me, through more stories, more reflections, more truths that don't always get said out loud, subscribing is the way to stay close. It's how we keep building this community, step by step, with empathy and honesty, because the more we speak, the more we heal. Now, let's go a little deeper. Now I want to go even deeper into this, because what happened next still echoes in my chest every time I close my eyes. It started with a fall, a simple one. I tripped on the carpet, nothing dramatic, just a bruise on my leg and a little embarrassment. Before that, there were a few moments of forgetfulness. I mixed up a doctor's appointment. I left the kettle on once. Tiny things, human things. But to my son, those small moments turned into a giant conclusion, that I was no longer fit to be on my own. I didn't expect what came next. No serious conversation. No honest talk where I could explain how I felt or what I needed. Instead, he called me one afternoon, said he was coming over, and brought to people I didn't know. Professionals, apparently. They spoke softly, as if I were fragile glass. They asked me questions with a careful tone, nodding too much. It felt like an interview I didn't know I was in, a test I didn't ask to take. And then, before I fully understood what was happening, my belongings were packed, arrangements had been made, my name was on papers I hadn't read. They told me it was for my safety, that I'd be better cared for, that it was temporary. But nothing about it felt temporary. It felt final, like a decision that had been made long before they looked me in the eyes. They called it love. I called it erasure. That night, in a room that wasn't mine, surrounded by walls that didn't know my stories, I lay awake and felt something break inside me. Not just my heart, my sense of self, my identity, my freedom. The betrayal didn't come from strangers, it came from the person I loved the most. And the worst part, he believed he was doing the right thing. That's what makes this all so complicated. Because sometimes the deepest wounds are wrapped in good intentions. Sometimes control disguises itself as compassion. And unless you've lived it, unless you've felt that helplessness crawl up your spine, it's hard to explain how devastating it is to be spoken over, dismissed, and relocated like a fragile object. It wasn't about the fall, it was about the fear. His fear. And that fear made him act fast, too fast, without realizing that I hadn't asked to be saved. I had asked to be respected. The truth is, aging doesn't mean we stop dreaming. We don't stop thinking. We don't stop being human. And when the people closest to us treat us like problems to be solved instead of people to be heard, we lose more than independence. We lose trust. We lose the quiet certainty that our life still belongs to us. That's what hurt the most, the absence of trust. The silence where a conversation should have been. I would have listened. I would have compromised. But I was never given the chance. And the irony is, the more they tried to protect me, the more alone I felt. It's a strange kind of grief, mourning the version of yourself that was free. Mourning the bond you thought was built on mutual respect. And learning, day by day, how to reclaim even the smallest pieces of your identity within walls you didn't choose. If you've felt something like this, even just a piece of it, I'd be grateful if you told me in the comments. You can write, "This hit home," because sometimes just putting it into words is the first step toward healing. Now I want to go even deeper into this. Because what I've come to learn is that what happened to me wasn't just an isolated experience. It wasn't just a family misunderstanding or a misstep driven by fear. It's part of something bigger, something many people are living right now, often in silence, unsure if what they're feeling is even valid. There's a name for it. Experts call it emotional infantilization. It's when adult children, even with the best intentions, start treating their aging parents not as autonomous adults, but as fragile beings who need constant supervision, direction, and permission, as if aging automatically means we're no longer capable of making our own decisions. But here's the truth that rarely gets spoken. Many of us, despite the lines on our faces or the stiffness in our joints, are still mentally clear, emotionally aware, and very much present in our own lives. We still understand consequences. We still think deeply. We still feel intensely. And yet, somehow, when age enters the room, it's like all of that becomes invisible. Like the world sees the number, not the person behind it. This pattern of infantilization isn't always obvious. It doesn't always look like shouting or force. Sometimes, it's a soft takeover masked as helping. You start hearing things like, "Let me do that for you," or "You don't need to worry about this anymore," or even worse, "This is for your own good." And it's not that the help isn't appreciated, it's the way it's offered, or rather, imposed. Because autonomy isn't just about being physically able, it's about choice. It's about being consulted. It's about having your thoughts, feelings, and preferences still matter, even when your body starts to slow down. And when those basic respects are stripped away, what you're left with is not care. It's a cage dressed in politeness. Psychologists say this dynamic often begins when adult children carry unresolved fear, fear of loss, fear of responsibility, fear of watching a parent decline. And instead of facing that fear with openness, they try to control it by controlling us. They don't mean harm, but the impact is still the same. We become spectators in our own lives. And that's where the real fracture begins. Because when someone speaks for you long enough, you start to wonder if your voice still counts, if your thoughts still carry weight, if your wants still matter. That's the emotional erosion that happens under the surface. Not in one big dramatic moment, but in the hundreds of tiny moments where you're told, in subtle ways, that you don't know what's best for yourself anymore. What's most heartbreaking is that many parents internalize this. They start to believe the silence. They stop asking for what they need. They go along with the plans made for them, not because they agree, but because they feel they've lost the right to say no. And when that happens, the damage isn't just relational, it becomes a deep wound in the identity. A quiet grief for a freedom that's been slowly taken away, one decision at a time. So when people say, they're just trying to help, I always ask, was help requested? Because there's a profound difference between helping and hijacking someone's agency, between supporting and controlling. And if that line isn't acknowledged, if it's constantly crossed, love starts to feel like domination. We need to start recognizing this pattern, naming it, talking about it. Because no one should have to lose their voice just because they've lived long enough to earn a few gray hairs. No one should have to trade their independence for proximity to family. And no one, absolutely no one, should have to fight for the right to be heard in their own life. If any of this has touched a nerve, write it down below. Even if it's just a word, just type, "This makes sense to me." Because knowing you're not alone in this kind of pain, that's where healing begins. Now I want to go even deeper into this. Because behind every act of control, behind every silencing gesture, there's a motivation that isn't always easy to see. And understanding that motivation doesn't excuse the pain, but it does help us make sense of the wound. Because most of the time, children who begin to control their aging parents aren't trying to be cruel. They're trying to protect. At least, that's what they tell themselves. But here's the truth, most don't want to admit. Protection can become possession when it's rooted in fear, not respect. And that's where everything starts to shift. Because the fear isn't always about the parent, it's often about the child's own discomfort with change, with mortality, with the idea that life is slipping forward faster than they can control. So they grab hold of what they can. They try to manage the parents, keep them safe, keep them stable, keep them close. And sometimes, without even realizing it, they cross the line between caring and caging. You see, there's a truth hidden in the background of many of these stories, a truth that few people talk about. It's that many adult children struggle deeply with the concept that their parents are still adults, that they still have opinions, desires, boundaries, that they still want independence. To the child, that independence can feel threatening, dangerous, because it means letting go of the illusion of control. And letting go, especially when fear is present, can feel impossible. This isn't just about aging, it's about identity and emotional roles. For years, the parent was the authority figure, the protector, the strong one. And then suddenly, the child begins to reverse that dynamic. Not gradually, not collaboratively, but all at once. They forget that transition can be mutual, that dignity can still exist alongside support. Instead, they rush to take over. And in doing so, they miss one of the most powerful truths about aging, that it doesn't erase adulthood, it refines it. But when those emotional roles get reversed too quickly, without conversation, without consent, what you're left with is confusion, resentment, and deep emotional damage. The child believes they're acting out of love, the parent feels betrayed, and in that space of misunderstanding, relationships start to fracture. And let's be honest, sometimes, control is more about the child's needs than the parent's well-being. Maybe they feel guilt about not being around more. Maybe they're trying to make up for lost time by overcompensating. Maybe they've never fully dealt with their own fear of losing a parent, and so they try to delay the inevitable by micromanaging everything. It's not always conscious, but it's real, and its impact is lasting. There's a psychological term for this, hidden reaction, when children project their own emotional discomfort onto their parents under the guise of protection. It's not just infantilization, it's a form of role confusion. And when that confusion isn't named or addressed, it solidifies into control patterns that are hard to break. That's why conversations matter. That's why mutual respect matters. Because if you don't name what's really going on, the decisions get louder, but the understanding gets quieter. What needs to be heard more than anything is this: protecting your parent doesn't mean erasing who they are. Real protection begins with listening, with asking, with respecting the answer, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Because true care honors both safety and autonomy. And any care that demands obedience without dialogue, that's not care. That's fear in disguise. If this reflection opens something in you, if you've ever seen this happening in your family, or felt it inside yourself, write in the comments, I see the truth behind it. Because recognizing the hidden dynamics is the first step to changing them. Now I want to go even deeper into this. Because unless you've lived it, really lived it, it's hard to explain what happens inside a person when they're no longer allowed to choose for themselves. When the simple, everyday decisions, what to eat, where to go, whether to stay in your own home, are quietly taken out of your hands. And I'm not talking about someone refusing help or being reckless. I'm talking about being capable, aware, and still being told, this isn't your choice anymore. It changes something in you. I remember sitting on the edge of a bed that wasn't mine, in a room that didn't carry my memories, staring at a small window that looked out onto a parking lot. And I remember feeling erased, like the woman I had spent a lifetime becoming, the one who raised children, survived losses, built a home from nothing, had somehow disappeared, not because I was sick, not because I had lost my mind, but because someone else decided I no longer knew what was best for me. That kind of silence eats away at you. You begin to shrink in small ways. You stop speaking up. You hesitate before expressing a preference. You sit quietly while others talk around you, about you, as if you're not even in the room. And slowly, the world begins to feel colder. Not because it is cold, but because you no longer feel seen in it. Loneliness doesn't always come from being alone. Sometimes, it comes from being surrounded by people who think they know what's best for you, and never ask you what you want. That's the part most people miss. This isn't just about pride. It's not about being stubborn. It's about something deeper, something sacred. The right to still feel human. The right to wake up and know that your voice carries weight. That you can still decide how you want to spend the time you have left. Whether it's loving someone new, taking a walk by yourself, or just choosing what color to paint your bedroom. These are not small things. These are symbols of agency. And when they're taken away, it's not just freedom that gets lost, it's identity. When you're told over and over, in big ways or subtle ones, that you can't be trusted with your own life, something inside you begins to dim. You question yourself. You doubt your instincts. You feel like a burden, even when no one says it out loud. And that's the part that hurts the most. Feeling like your existence has become a problem, to be solved instead of a person to be loved. So, if you've ever felt like this, if you've ever sat in silence, trying to hold back the weight of that invisible sadness, I want you to hear this from me, from one soul to another. You have the right to be heard. You have the right to decide. You have the right to live your life your way. You are not asking for too much. You are asking for what should have never been taken from you in the first place. And if this feels personal to you, if you read these words and felt something stir in your chest, write this in the comments so I know you're here with me. This makes sense to me. Now, I want to go even deeper into this. Because as heavy as this has all been, I want you to know something that might bring a little light back into your heart. There is a way through this. There is something you can do even if it feels like your voice has been buried under layers of decisions that weren't yours to make. Even if it feels like you've already been silenced too many times. Because what's been lost can be reclaimed. Not always easily, not overnight. But yes, it can. And it starts with one simple, yet incredibly powerful act. Speaking up. Speak not with bitterness, but with clarity. Speak not with accusation, but with truth, because your truth matters. Your feelings matter. And even if they've been dismissed before, saying them out loud is an act of self-respect. A declaration that you are still here, still aware, still worthy of being heard. You don't need to shout. You don't need to demand. But you do need to be firm, to say, I know you're trying to help, but I need to be part of this conversation. Or, I appreciate your concern, but I still know what I want, and I want to live in a way that honors that. Those words might feel terrifying at first, especially if you've been quiet for a long time, but they are seeds, and once planted they grow. You see, a lot of adult children don't realize the harm they're causing. They're reacting to their own fear, their own projections, But when you calmly and clearly name what you need, you interrupt that pattern. You bring attention to the invisible dynamic that's been stealing your autonomy. And if speaking directly to them feels too hard right now, that's okay too. There's no shame in asking for help. A therapist, a mediator, a trusted friend, someone who can help you build a bridge back to your voice. Because sometimes we need someone else to walk beside us while we take that step. You are not alone, and you are not powerless. There are alternatives. So many people think institutionalizing a parent is the only option, but there are paths that include dialogue, paths that invite understanding, paths that preserve your independence while honoring your safety. It doesn't have to be one or the other. You don't have to trade dignity for support. That's a false choice the world keeps offering us, but we don't have to accept it. The real transformation happens when both sides, parent and child, sit down with honesty and openness. When the child stops trying to protect by controlling, and the parent stops shrinking out of guilt or fear. When both say, let's find a way to walk this next chapter together, with respect. Because aging isn't a crisis, it's a transition. And like all transitions, it deserves tenderness, courage, and most of all, consent. So if you're feeling the weight of everything we've been talking about, if you've reached that point where you know something needs to change, but you don't quite know how, just start here. With truth, with your words, with your needs spoken clearly, without apology. That is how you begin to reclaim the space you should have never lost. And if that touched something in you, if it reminded you of a moment, or someone you love, or even just something you've carried quietly for too long, write it down below. Type these words so I know you're here with me. I'm ready to speak my truth. Now I want to go even deeper into this. Now I want to go even deeper into this. Because if there's one truth that deserves to echo long after this conversation ends, it's this. You are not alone, not in your frustration, not in your heartbreak, not in your quiet courage to still want more for yourself, even when the world keeps trying to convince you that more is no longer yours to ask for. There is something profoundly powerful about remembering your own worth in a season, when others might be trying to rewrite your identity for you. And if you're here right now, still listening, still feeling, still open, then I know you haven't given up on yourself. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you've been pushed down more times than you can count. Maybe you've gone unheard for so long that you started to believe silence was the only option left. But it's not, and it never was. Because your voice didn't disappear. It was just waiting. Waiting for the right moment to rise again. Not in rebellion, but in truth. Not in anger, but in self-respect. You were never meant to fade quietly into the background of your own life. You were never meant to feel like a burden for still having dreams, or preferences, or the desire to love and be loved. Your existence is not a problem. It is a story, one that deserves to be told with dignity, with freedom, with your hands still on the wheel. And yes, there are challenges. There will always be people who think they know what's best for you, even when they've stopped asking you what you think. But your power lies in your ability to reclaim the conversation, to remind them, and yourself, that care without consent is not love, that support without respect is not safety, and that growing older doesn't mean growing invisible. So, here's what I hope you carry with you from this moment forward. You have a right to be seen, heard, and honored at every stage of life. Your voice is not a footnote, it is the headline. And anyone who truly loves you should want to hear it. And if you've lived through something like this, or if someone you care about has, I'd love to know you're here with me. Type in the comments, my voice also matters. Let's show the world, and maybe even ourselves, that we're still here, still speaking, still choosing. If this message touched something inside you, if it reminded you that your autonomy, your story, and your truth still matter, a simple like on this video is more than just a click. It's a quiet agreement, a way of saying, yes, I believe in this too. And if this conversation meant something to you, if it gave you clarity or strength or even just a sense of being understood, you're welcome to stay. There's more to explore, more to question, more to share. We're building a space for real dialogue, for honest emotion, for dignity in every chapter of life. There's a video waiting for you just beside this one that continues the journey. Click on it, and let's keep going together. If you're still here with me, truly, thank you. That tells me this conversation found a place in your heart, and that means more than I can say. If the stories we shared today made you reflect, if they brought you a little clarity, or even just made you feel less alone, I'd love for you to stick around. That's exactly what this space is for. Truth, emotion, and the kind of dialogue that honors our voice at every stage of life. If you made it to the end, let me know you were here by writing in the comments, "This message was for me." I'd really like to know who stayed with me through every word, because your presence, your attention, it matters. It's what gives life to this conversation. And if the content resonated with you, go ahead and tap the like button, not as a favor, but as a quiet way of saying, "I get it. I needed this too." That small action helps keep this message alive and helps it reach someone else who might be right where you are now. And if you felt that this video gave you something of value, insight, comfort, a sense of belonging, consider subscribing. That way, you'll always know when there's a new story, a new truth, a new reflection waiting for you here.